What's going on, guys? It's going to be our summary markets week 76. We're going to get into SPY, gold, oil, Bitcoin, Ethereum as always. Then we're going to talk about some sector analysis. Then we're going to go over some things that I think look good for this week. Let's start out with SPY. You almost hit our final target. Our final target would be around 441, 440, somewhere around there, the 1618 of the breakout from down here in March. And we're almost there. So pretty much that target has been hit. So what I'm going to do actually to clean up this chart a little bit, we're going to go ahead and delete this. We're going to delete all these lower gap fills that have been played. This one we'll keep on for now. We're going to extend that a little bit. What we're actually going to do here is we're going to grab a more local fib. So we're going to look at this little local move here that gave us that perfect 618 bounce there. So this is kind of like the short-term fib that we are currently trading in. So the 441 level still lines up perfectly. So if we break that level, that would be the final target of that previous fib and the fake out level of the current fib. So if we break that, we should be looking at around 450 to 452. Somewhere in the middle there, you would have about 444. That'd be like right around the 382 fib. So somewhere around 44 to 45 would be like the little short-term target. But your overall targets would be somewhere around the 450 range, okay? So for those to be triggered, you do need to break this 441 level before pulling back and filling that gap or seeing any kind of resistance, right? If it does want to pull back, we do have a local gap here. So we put in a gap on Friday that we did not fill, which is a little unusual because the recent fibs that it's been putting in the past couple weeks, they've been filling almost right away. Most of the time in the same day or in the next day. So watch out for that. You could come back down to fill that gap around 435. Just understand that we have a lot of earnings this week. So the analysis that I'm giving you guys, take it with a grain of salt, obviously. Like it's going to be mainly driven by earnings. And as you guys know, earnings are extremely hard to predict. So the market this week is going to be extremely hard to predict. All right. So keep an eye on these SPY levels, but just understand that it could be driven by those earnings. Moving on to gold. Gold had a little bit of a pullback last week, pulling back to retest that range high there around 1790. It did bounce pretty much every single time you came down to test that level. So the buyers are strong down there. If you can get back above like 1812, then gold should start to push back towards the 50-day moving average or back towards like 1860. Break below that level, most likely go down to the range low around 1770. Moving on to oil here. Oil had a pretty strong week last week. You failed down, but then you bounced very heavily. So that level around 65 to 67 that we talked about last week acted as perfect support. You actually put in a new daily pivot, which then launched you back above the 50, and now we're coming back into contact with the OTS trail. So if we can break above the OTS trail here around 7250, you should be looking for around 76 to 77, all right? If it fails that OTS trail, then look for that pivot that just got created around 66. Moving on to Bitcoin here, you're actually starting to get a little bullish finally. What have I been telling you guys for, a few months now? I've been saying watch that 50-day moving average. We need to break above that before we can get bullish here. So we are currently testing that 50-day moving average right around 34,000, 34.3, I believe exactly. So right now it currently is above that 50-day. If we can get a few closes above the 50, maybe break towards like the 36 to 37,000 range, then that 50 will be completely broken. Now once that 50 starts to go back up, so once we start to see kind of like a curl, then we're getting very bullish, okay? So watch out for that. We have broken our local downtrend here. The OTS is trying to turn bullish. The Momo has confirmed the bottom, and we are pushing off with some short-term momentum, so that is pretty strong here. If we can hold above, like I said, around that 37 to 38, then we would be talking about breaking this range. Now, like I always tell you guys, when you're in ranges like this, you want to sell the highs and buy the lows, right? Now, that is still the case, but I would be a little careful here. If you start to push up, sorry, there's a fire truck going by. If you start to push up here towards that like 40,000 range high, this is going to be breaking pretty much the entire consolidation that we've been in the entire, like, what, 2-3 months. So I'd be a little hesitant to sell the highs up here if you do see some strong momentum into that level. But if you do sell the highs, you would just be putting your stop losses above the range. So if you do break out of the range, you would be quickly stopped out. Okay, so I would lean bullish here just slightly. If you can hold above the 50-day, then you're looking very good into that kind of 38 to 40,000 range. Pretty much the same thing with Ethereum. You are trying to break this little downtrend that we are in. You're kind of retesting it right now. If you can break the 50-day, which is also the middle of the range, which is also the trend, everything lines up nicely, right? If you can break above like 2,300, then we're talking about a break into the 27 to 3,000 range, okay? Same thing with this. Typically, you would sell the highs, buy the lows. But if we do push back into that area, it will be very strong, so be a little careful selling the highs. If you do, once again, put your stop losses pretty close, so if it does go for a major breakout, you don't lose too much. The signs on Ethereum are actually slightly more bullish if you look at the Momo. We have confirmed the bottom, and you are also pinching bullishly towards the upper section, so that is very bullish, okay? We just need to hold above that 50-day for a few days and give it some time to start curling up, and then we could be looking at a bull market coming back very, very soon. All right. But all right, that is the summary of markets. Make sure you guys like and subscribe if you guys like the content. We are going to move on to the options watch list and sector analysis. All right, moving on to sector analysis here. The semiconductor sector looked very, very good last week. You had a sell-off, but then you recovered right off that 382 fib, bouncing off that as support pretty strongly. Nice little hammer there on Friday. If you can get above like 258, very likely we'll get towards like 263 and then maybe a breakout. The energy sector bounced right off that level I gave you guys, right around 47. As long as oil continues to bounce, the energy sector will follow. So keep an eye on that. You should be able to bounce back towards like the 51 to 52 area if oil has a strong week. Gold still looking very weak. Not really a whole lot of analysis on that one. If it can reclaim like 34, then we could look at it. But right now, not looking too good. The financial sector still consolidating. Nice little recovery last week. A little micro pullback off that recovery. If you can hold above like 36, looks pretty decent. Break above 37, then it looks really good. XLK, the technology sector, had a very, very strong week. You had that nasty gap down on, I believe, Monday, and then the rest of the week was just straight up. So you reclaimed the trend, you broke the previous high. The technology sector looks very, very good. Now, one thing to look out for, we do have some big tech companies with earnings next week and the week after, so pay attention to that. Same thing with communications, sold off, but then we recovered the trend, then we recovered the local high. I believe that's an all-time high. Yeah, all-time high. Communication sector doing very, very well here. So as long as you stay above that like 81 gap and then like the $80 area, it looks pretty good. Moving on to real estate. Real estate looks really good here. You can stay above this trend. You can break this local high. It's kind of like an ascending triangle. So if you break above like 106.50, then we're talking about pushing into 108, 110 pretty fast. Okay, so watch out for that. Utilities did exactly what we talked about last week. I told you guys that was most likely a fake out, and you could pull back into that channel. So we did pull back here, but we had a pretty strong day on Friday, so it actually doesn't look too bad. If you can break out of this trend here, back above like 66.50, then we could go for the highs around 68. Moving on to materials. Materials also did exactly what we said, but it had a strong recovery after doing so. So we had that range form. We broke out of that range bearishly, just like we expected, but right after the breakdown, you recovered very strongly, and now we're actually back into that range. So this would be what you would consider a deviation, right? So this becomes a deviation here, and then this should send you back to the range high, okay? So if we can stay above this deviation right around 176, this should go back to 183. And then if we can break above that, then we're paying attention to this previous range. We could get back to that like 190 area. Okay, so watch out for that. Infrastructure, basically the same thing. This became a deviation, and now we are back into the range. So very likely you will go to the range high. And then if we can break the range high, we should be looking for those upper levels around 37. What is this? Healthcare. Healthcare did very, very well last week. Had a nasty sell-off, bounced off the trend, and then we exploded out of that recent high. So anything above like 130, 129, very, very bullish. The next target on this, let's see. We could take the entire move here if we wanted. It would give us a target of 134 to 135. Moving on to consumer staples, they held up very well last week and then had a very strong close. So if we can break above this previous high right here, around 72, then we're talking about probably 73, 74. Let's take a look at what the fib says. The fib says 73 and then 74.50. So watch out for that. Moving on to retail, nice recovery last week as well. If we can hold above this recent high here, break above this recent high, then we're talking about getting to 100 very quickly. That would be like the fake out level. We want to break through that pretty strong. And then we're talking about probably like 105 would be the target above that. Moving on to consumer discretionary. The consumer discretionary is heavily weighted. I believe Tesla is the number one weighted company in this ETF. So I'd be very, very careful. They have earnings on Monday or Tuesday, I believe. I'm not sure exactly which day. But they have earnings very, very early next week. So if that is bad earnings, this is going to nuke. If it has good earnings, it's probably going to go up. So pay attention to Tesla. That will give you what's going to happen in discretionary. Okay, let's move on to the actual watch list here. Snapchat had a massive week. If you guys followed those calls that I posted in Cheddarflow, they gave you over a 1,000% gain. So make sure you guys are watching the analysis channel. Make sure you guys are watching the Cheddarflow channel. I call out a ton of plays that come in through options flow and just charts that are looking good. Make sure you guys are paying attention to our analysis because that play was extremely easy. It came in at the end of the day before earnings. They were like, I think less than $1 a contract. They were $1, somewhere around $1, and they went to over $11 to $12. So very, very big move there. So make sure you guys are watching those channels. I think this thing could still continue. It's all-time high right now. You could get 80, could get 82. Those are the next targets. It has to stay above 73 moving forward. Moving on, DocuSign was another one that we called out above 293. I told you guys it could break out very heavily. 300, 310 being smashed. This thing could probably get to around 320 next week if you can get some buyers very early. So watch out for that. Moving on, Dash. I told you guys as long as you held that 170 target, Dash was looking really good. You recovered that 170 level, and now we broke the local high. The close target is 200. Get above 200, and I believe the next target, was there a pivot up here? Let me see. I think it was a 4-hour pivot. Yeah, this one here. Oh, that's the 200 target. So above 200, you'll be looking for probably around 220. So watch out for that. Zoom, another one that we liked a lot. Zoom had beautiful candles down here on this previous range high. So as long as you can hold this as a support, break above, I'd say like 365, we could start to push towards that gap around 394. Yeah, it's bouncing right off the 50-day as well. So very strong bounce there. Fiverr, same thing, bouncing off the 50-day. If we can break above this pivot, above 247, then we're talking about pushing towards like the 280 to 300 level. You do have a gap above you right around 279. So if you break above that target, break above the pivot, excuse me, that would be the target. But watch out, we do have earnings coming up. Next up is 3M. 3M's currently holding the 50-day. If we can break above this local high around 203, you're looking at resistance around 207. Break above that, probably get to like 215. Chegg looking really good here. We broke this downtrend, came back to kind of retest it. We flipped the 50-day, flipped the pivot, had a very strong day on Friday, breaking that range high. This looks very, very good. If you can break above 90, you could easily see a break towards 100 very quickly. Watch out, once again, you do have earnings coming up on that as well. Pinterest had a very strong day. Pinterest typically follows Snapchat, so if you guys don't know, Snapchat usually leads when they have earnings before Pinterest, Etsy, and Facebook. If Snapchat has earnings first, if they have good earnings, which they typically have been having, Pinterest, Etsy, and Facebook all typically run after the Snapchat earnings. Okay, so watch out for Pinterest here. Looks really good. Break above 78 is a pivot around 81. Break above that, probably 85. Shopify, this thing has just been nonstop killing it, man. We told you guys in Discord if it got above that 1500 level, it was looking for a breakout. That's exactly what it did. Got above 1500, you hit the 1600 level, easy. 1650, easy. Okay, so if we can break above 1650 here, look for 1700. Let's also look for a fib here. We can take the local fib. That would give us 1740 and 1780. Okay, so watch for 1700 and then those fib targets. Teladoc, another company that should do well if the COVID fears continue. Keep an eye on this above like 160, 170. Problem is they have earnings coming up as well, so watch out for that. But if we do break above 160, 170, very easy target around 186 on that gap fill. Like I said, Etsy likes to run with good earnings on Snapchat. Had a very, very good week last week. You broke that downtrend that we told you guys about in Discord. I told you guys above that downtrend, very likely we're going to get 205. Get above 205, 200 or 220, and then 234 would be your next targets. This one, not really watching anymore. Chewy, another one that looks really, really good. If you can break above this pivot, hold above like 88, we're talking about getting to like 95 to 100 very easily. That's kind of where that last little breakdown occurred. So watch out for that. Break above this range very easily. Retest those levels. This one already had earnings, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, last but not least, let's talk about big tech. Now, once again, like I said, lots of earnings this week and the week after. So take this analysis that I'm about to give you with a grain of salt, man. It's going to be driven by earnings pretty much 100%. Okay, so I'll give you some levels to watch, but just understand that whatever earnings says, that's what it's going to do. So Microsoft, the next target we would look at is around 293 to 295. If you have bad earnings, probably going to go back down to that gap around like 281 to 280. All right. Apple looking really good as well. Probably go back to the 150 target and break out of that. You'll probably get like 152 to 153. Bad earnings probably back down to 142 if you get below 145. Facebook earnings coming up. Had a very, very big day with the Snapchat earnings. You hit our targets here. You almost hit the second target. If it gets above like 373, 375, look for 390 as that next zone. Bad earnings probably come back down to fill 350, maybe 340. Netflix had a really strong bounce. We actually bought some shares on Netflix for our long-term portfolio right around 505, I believe it was, or 510, somewhere around there. Looking really good off that pivot bounce. If you can get it back above like 520, looking really good to see like 540 to 550. This already had earnings, so you don't have to watch out for that. Moving on to Amazon, they do have earnings coming up, I believe, next week, so watch out for that. Good earnings probably send you to 37.50, maybe 38.50. Watch out for that. Bad earnings would send you down to probably 3,500. All right. Last but not least, Tesla. This one has earnings, I believe, on Monday, maybe Tuesday, but it should be within the first 2 days of the week. TradingView says the 26th, so tomorrow. So I believe it's tomorrow. Good earnings. Look for around 689, somewhere around that 680 range. Bad earnings, probably go back down to like 600. All right. Those are the levels for you guys. Hopefully you guys liked the video. Once again, make sure to subscribe on YouTube. Hit that like button if you guys like the content. And I will see you guys tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern for our analysis stream. See you guys tomorrow. Peace.